Hello, and welcome to this evening's business workshop, Succession Planning, Preparing to Retire from Business Ownership. Thank you for joining us. My name is Drea Flores, and I'm the business librarian at the Aurora Public Library District. Tonight, I am pleased to welcome presenter Harriet Parker. Harriet serves as the manager of the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Waubonsee Community College. We're lucky to have Harriet with us as she explains the fundamentals of long-term and short-term succession planning. As a reminder, I want to let everyone know that this workshop is being recorded and will be available on the library's YouTube channel for future viewing. Before we begin, I'd like to let everyone know about our next business workshop on Tuesday, March 2nd, and it's called Controlling the Controllables with guest speaker Al Williams. We hope you can join us for Al's fun and inspirational sales training workshop. Al will talk about strategies and techniques on how you can adopt the principled mindset and habits of successful people by focusing your energy on the things that you can control. You can learn more about this workshop by going to our library's event calendar on our website at www.aurorapubliclibrary.org. So with that, let's begin our program. Harriet, I'd like to turn things over to you now.
Great, thank you, Drea. Looking forward to this. As Drea mentioned, we are going to talk about exit planning or succession planning, but basically the things that you need to know in order to get ready to retire from business ownership. So first, I want to just introduce the Small Business Development Center and tell you a little bit about the program. The Small Business Development Center is a grant-funded program. We get our funding from the Small Business Administration, the Department of Commerce, and then we get matching funds from the college, Waubonsee Community College. My office, when I am working in person, is located in the downtown Aurora campus of Waubonsee. We are currently working remotely by Zoom. We also have a partnership with Kishwaukee College. And at the core of our services, we offer no cost, unlimited one-on-one business assistance. So no matter where you are in your business journey, whether you're just getting started, trying to grow it, or getting ready to retire, anywhere in that process, we can provide assistance to you at no cost. So I'll provide my contact information at the end of this presentation, and all you need to do is to call or email us if you would like some help. In addition to our one-on-one assistance, we also offer a variety of small business workshops that you can find on our website at waubonsee.edu/SBDC. Okay, so let's get started talking about exit planning. So if you see from the statistics on the slide, many small business owners, a large percentage of them, have a, a lot of their wealth tied up in their business. So 90% of a business owner's wealth is often from their small business. However, unfortunately, only about 25% of those small businesses ever sell to a new owner. And even in addition to that, there's about 50% of businesses where they have a deal on the table and that never close. So the whole process of selling your business or transitioning it to a new owner obviously is very challenging. So the first thing that I want to talk about is why. Why don't businesses transition? And the number one reason is that when you go to retire from your business and you look to sell, being unable to find a qualified buyer. So you have a good business, you think you have it priced right, but you're not able to find that buyer. So the rest of these points on this slide kind of really all relate to that number one reason, but I want to cover them. And if any one of these in particular stands out to you, definitely it's something you want to think about, and it's something that we probably can help you sort through. But the next one is waiting too long. It takes quite a while to prepare your business to sell and to get the value for it. So, a business owner, your business is your baby, right? And we hate to let go of it. So I see many times business owners just putting that decision off. I don't want to let it go. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to retire. And they wait until the last minute. And unfortunately, often what happens in that case is the owner gets tired and stops paying attention to keeping the revenue up and the brand awareness up and the marketing going. And so the business starts to decline, which in turn reduces the valuation of the business and often sometimes puts the business in a state where it's really not viable to a new owner. The next thing is financial records. Entrepreneurs, business owners, many business owners are not good at keeping financial records for their business, and so they when it comes time to sell, and the bank needs to look at those records to see if they can finance the purchase, or the prospective buyer wants to get more information about how the business is running, the financial records are not up to snuff to be able to support that. Kind of tied to the one about waiting to the last minute is owner's emotional attachment to the business. But where this often shows up is in unrealistic expectations of the business valuation. So, especially if as an owner, you put a lot of sweat equity into getting that business started and running, and you just kind of feel that you should be getting paid back for that equity. Sometimes that just doesn't work out that way. And so you have to look at the sale of the business as a business transaction and try to pull the emotion out of it. The next reason that businesses don't sell is that the owner has some financial needs that go beyond what the sale price of the business can realistically support. So if you're in debt, sometimes I see this where the business owner also owns the building that they're in, and they may have debt in that building, or they just may have specific needs to personally, what their retirement finances are going to require, and the sale of the business is not going to support that. Next is health issues. Business owners, maybe they're not planning to retire, but they run into some unexpected health issues along the way. Also, if you're in a family business or you have a partner in your business, partner or family disagreements can sometimes come into play. If you are partner owned, you want to make sure that you have a good, solid buy sell agreement in place that addresses all the details of the sale of the business. And then the last thing has to do with the connection between the business owner and the business. So many cases the business is too reliant on the owner for continuity. So the business by itself, the brand doesn't stand alone. The owner has to really be there. They have all the relationships. Maybe the brand is really dependent on how they deliver their services. Sometimes employees have an alliance with the owner, and they're not going to stay around for a transition. Sometimes as the owner, you have expertise that's not easily replicated to a buyer. So these are all things to think about if you're planning to sell your business at some day. Most of these can be addressed and overcome, but you have to be aware of them in order to do that. So next, I want to talk a little bit about who might possibly buy your business, because even if you're nowhere close to being ready to sell or retire, you should never stop thinking about who might buy that business and be looking for prospects for who could ultimately be an owner of your business someday. So selling to an outside party, that could be a supplier, it could be a customer, a contractor, a competitor, or even a business associate. So you want to look at people that have regular interaction with your business, that might have some of the same expertise, and or an interest in becoming an owner someday. And then next would be a family member or an employee. And there's a couple things to think about if you're looking at that as a possible buyer for your business. One is, we talked about this on the previous slide, but is your business set up in such a way as the new owner would be able to deliver your product or service without you there? Somebody who's knowledgeable about or has a relationship with the customer base, and then someone that has familiarity with your business systems. So it could be your accounting systems or your CRM system or just your order fulfillment procedure. And these are things to look at as you get closer to identifying a prospective buyer. And then obviously, I mean, this sometimes this third thing is the best option, and that is just to close the business and liquidate assets. Sometimes you can actually get more money for your business by liquidating assets than you might be able to get in selling the business. So it may not be the ideal option. We always like to see a business continue into new ownership, but it's definitely the way that that some business owners exit from their business. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what kinds of resources are you going to need for the transaction of selling your business. So the first thing is business advisor. So someone like myself at the Small Business Development Center or another business consultant or coach. And that's a great place to start because a advisor can really help you prepare and start to kind of work the kinks out and you get your business in good shape to sell. But as you get closer to the sales process, you are likely going to need most, if not all, of these other resources. So, first, I want to just talk about a valuation expert. There are business brokers who can do valuations, there are certified valuation experts that are kind of on the expensive side. And many accountants can do a valuation for you for your business. I would say, more often than not, it is not necessary to pay, a lot of money to get a valuation on your company because at the end of the day, it's going to be a negotiation between you and the buyer, and you're going to end up, determining not only what is the business worth, what do you want to get for it, but also what is the buyer willing and able to pay for that business. And that also includes if that buyer is going to need bank financing, um, does the valuation support a financing opportunity? So many times valuation go to your accountant. This is a good practice to do throughout the life of your business, is periodically just have an accountant tell you what is your business worth. I'm going to talk about a little bit more about valuation a little bit farther on as well. Okay, next is the accountant. An accountant is where somebody who really can help you to get your books in shape, make sure that they're looking the best that they can in order to make that sale attractive. You're going to want an attorney to handle the actual sale transaction to make sure that the corporation transfers over, that there's no liens involved, and you don't want to try to do that without legal help. Financial planner, where the financial planner comes into play is to help you determine what financial needs you have in retirement and to look at the valuation of the business and to see how is that the sale of that business going to impact your retirement, along with any other retirement assets that you have. The banker is going to be involved as far as helping finance the transaction, not always, but often. Business broker. Business broker is optional. I'll talk about that. A business broker can list your business for sale, and also kind of help you with some other things like valuation, putting together an attractive sell sheet. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But just a note about business brokers is they do charge fees, and I would say in usually they are not like going to go out and find the buyer for you. They're a listing agent, not a like a sales rep for your business. And then last thing is marketing. Marketing resources are things that can really help you, put a shine on your business, making it look good for the buyer. And just like if you were selling your house and using some staging or putting a fresh coat of paint on the house, marketing can kind of help you do that for your business. So these are the resources that you want to think about. So as you can see, you are going to have some costs associated with this transaction. So you want to plan for that. Okay, so let's talk about preparation. So first we're going to talk um, about long-term preparation. Like what are some things you can do now, even if you're not planning to sell for quite a while from now. So as I mentioned, first thing is get your books in order. And I want to specifically mention cash transactions. So if you are doing any business via cash, you just want to know that that is reducing the potential value for your business. So you can only take money out of your business once. If you if you are doing business via cash, you are essentially taking part of that value of that business out at the time of that transaction. So if you want to really maximize the valuation of your business, you want to be sure that all your transactions are reported on financial statements and tax returns, because when you go to put your valuation together, and you're not going to really be able to say, well, we really have another 40% of our revenue is not really showing up on our books. And basically the response to that is going to be, well, then it doesn't exist. So you really want to try to get rid of those cash transactions. Want to make sure you're current on your tax returns, that your operations are profitable. So if you are in the habit, as is perfectly legitimate, of trying to minimize your tax liability every year, so deduct everything possible so as to either have a break even bottom line or even showing a loss, you're going to want to have a couple of years of turning that around to profits to help with your valuation of your business. So just be prepared to have a couple of years where you have some tax liability so that you can maximize the value of the business. If you've got assets or production equipment, those types of things, you want to make sure they're in good working order. Um, Inventory should be appropriate and saleable. So if you have a lot of just stuff that's sitting in the back room that's not likely to sell, put it on sale, get rid of it. You want to kind of clean that up before you go into the transaction. Uh, documenting your business operations and creating processes and procedures that are written down. This is really, really valuable. So when you go to sell the business, and many business owners, they operate based on what's in their head. So if you can document your business operations, it's going to really help a lot to facilitate that sale so that the new owner will know exactly how do you do things, how do you deliver your products and services, how do you create them, how do you handle payment transactions, do you have a website, all these things. You want to document that. uh, Systems up to date, any technology, website, e-commerce, just make sure that you've kind of tightened all that up and gotten that up to date. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, you want to take some time, meet with a financial planner, assess your personal financial situation so that you know what your needs are in retirement, and you can determine if the sale of your business is going to be adequate to meet those needs, or that you can start to plan um, to make any adjustments based on what that looks like. Okay, so now as we get closer to the actual sale of the business, here are some things you're going to want to do, to get prepared at that point in time. So the first thing is to prepare a sell sheet. And if you want to see an example of sell sheet, and I have one on the next slide, so I'll show you that in a minute. The first thing I would do is I would go to a site such as Biz Buy Sell or another site online that has business listings for sale. So those are business broker sites. And you're going to be able to kind of get a good example of some different kinds of sell sheets for your business. The other thing you can do is you can just Google, like let's say you have a pet grooming business. You can say, Google pet grooming businesses for sale and just see what comes up. And you can get some great examples of what a sell sheet looks like for a business similar to yours. So basically, what the sell sheet is um, it's kind of a marketing piece that's promoting your business. It's got statistics, it's got a little bit of your story in it. There's pictures, maybe location information, sales summary. At this point, you are not promoting detailed financial information, just high level sales information. And I'll show you that in just a minute. The other thing is you really want to put the uh, hard press on identifying a prospective buyer at this point. So, if you're just going to think you're going to go up to Time to Sell Your Business, get it listed on a broker site, sit back and wait for a buyer to come, you might be very disappointed. So, you need to take an active role in trying to identify a prospective buyer. Next is to determine your asking price. And this is where you're going to go out and get a professional valuation done so that you can list the asking price in the sell sheet. And then the two final things, one is just be prepared to negotiate, right? Just like any other major purchase, you're not going to just put your listing out there. Someone's going to come in and write a check and be done with it. So there's going to be negotiation in the process. And one of the things you want to consider related to that negotiation is whether or not you are willing to offer seller financing. So, especially in small business transactions, many times seller financing is needed, often because the buyer um, may not be able to get bank financing for the purchase. So, that could be the case if the buyer is an employee, a friend, a family member, where they maybe not do not already have business history, in which case they may have a challenging time getting financing, even if the business is sound. So you want to think about whether you're willing to offer any kind of seller financing deal. And seller financing is basically a contract you have with the buyer to pay you back. So you're essentially acting as the bank. And there's pros and cons to seller financing. The one that is both is that you have the basically if the buyer reneges on their deal to buy the business, you get to take the business back and keep what they've already paid. The con of that is that you get the business back, which is not really what your original intention was. So there's pros and cons to that, but I've seen a lot of deals go really well with seller financing and work out great. So it's something to consider and maybe to do a little more research on as to what that would look like and what the impact would be for you. So here's an example of a sell sheet. So this is a bar or tavern in Harvard, Illinois. You can see that it shows the asking price of the business, the gross revenue, and then in this case, there's real estate involved. So they're kind of gives you the high level numbers. It talks a little bit about the quantity of inventory that they have, when the company was established, and then it gives a little explanation the of the business and tells you like how many feet are owned in this business, how many employees there are, what's included in the sale, why is it being sold, and what is the owner willing to do to help with the transition. So this is, if you look at example sell sheets, you are going to see all different kinds of um, you know, looks and feels for what these look like. But so just by looking at some examples, it will help you be able to put one together for your own business. Okay, so let's talk about marketability factors. And by that I mean, what's helping to promote the sale or facilitate the sale of your business. So what's the buyer looking at when when they're considering the possibility of purchasing your business? So again, and this is where, kind of the bottom line of selling your business and the valuation question is your business is only worth what someone else is willing and able to pay for it. So this is where you definitely want to, you've got to find the buyer, and then you have to find a buyer that is going to be able and willing to pay what you want or what you're willing to negotiate for that business. As I mentioned, business brokers can be a good resource, but they cost money. Oftentimes, they don't produce results, and this is especially true for smaller businesses. The next question is the buyer is looking at your future earnings. So, how secure are they? If a new owner comes in and they're looking at that business, how confident can they be in the future earnings of that business? So, let's take a landscaping business for example. um, if you have a lot of high turnover in your customer base, then that buyer knows that they're basically going to have to come in and start, build that customer base up from scratch. But if you have a lot of long standing clients, then those future earnings might be pretty solid. You're definitely going to have to look at the transition of owner to owner and what's the customer relationship with that owner to make sure that you use the benefit of the original owner in helping secure any customer relationships to make sure those future earnings are safe. Next thing, the buyer is going to be looking at consistent revenues and profits year over year. So any educated buyer is going to be asking you for several years of financial statements and tax returns, probably somewhere between 3 to 5, because they want to see not only what does this business look like today, but what did it look like last year, the year before that, the year before that. So if you have ups and downs in your business, you're going to, be prepared to explain them. Especially if you've been running, running at break even to get tax benefits for a long time, and now you're suddenly showing profits. You're going to need to show some documentation to the new owner that justifies that. As I mentioned, written policies and procedures, business systems in place. These are all things that are very valuable to a new buyer. That you're in compliance with any relevant regulations. And then the last thing is employee stability and competence. So if you have employees in the business and those employees are um, oftentimes one of the best assets of the business, then you just want to make sure that they're prepared to transition, that they are competent. And this is what the buyer is going to be looking for as far as helping them make a decision about whether or not they should buy this business. Okay, valuation. This is always the first question that everybody asks, what's my business worth? And again, remember, your business is only worth what a qualified buyer is willing and able to pay for it. So valuation, most common in a small business, most frequently valuation is done by what's called seller's discretionary earnings, also sometimes known as net benefit to the owner. In other words, if I come in as the buyer, how much money am I going to be able to take out of this business to pay myself, pay for other benefits and perks, and still have the business be able to cover its costs and be at least break even or profitable. And there's calculations to be done in this. You can see a little example from a resource called the Business Reference Guide. But basically, when you're calculating valuation by this method, you're taking profit um, plus salary plus benefits and perks, as well as use of assets. Um, and then real estate and assets are valued separately. So you're adding up those sellers' discretionary earnings, and then they get multiplied by some multiplier that is kind of tied to industry. So in a small business, usually it's a 1 to 3 times multiplier. Um, I hardly ever in a small business see a multiplier much more than three, and usually it's somewhere between 1 and 2 something. There is a resource called the Business Reference Guide. I might be, Drea might be able to tell us if that's something that you could get at the library. But the Business Reference Guide is where you can look up, as you can see the little screenshot from this, you can look up a type of business and kind of get a rule of thumb for what the SDE is and what the multiplier is. But again, you're going to want an accountant to help you do a valuation of your business. So you can kind of do it by back of the napkin, but you're going to want to get an accountant to help you with this. Okay, so let's talk about the deal itself. So you have a buyer, you're kind of starting the negotiations. What's involved in the deal itself? Number one, buyer due diligence. So the any buyer worth his or her salt is going to want to validate the information that you have shared with them. So they're not only are they going to want to see your financial statements and your tax returns, but they may want to sit down with you in the business and have you dig into those numbers and show them, hey, I want to see receipts that back these numbers up. Or I want to see exactly what these transactions look like I want to kind of get to know this business a little bit before I buy it. When am working with a buyer who is trying to do due diligence on a possible purchase of a business, the big red flag is when the seller is not willing to share information. Because if they're not willing to share information, what that means almost 100% of the time is either what's being asked for does not have a good answer, or does not does not back up the valuation of the business. So be prepared for the buyer of your business to do that due diligence. If you're looking at this from the buyer perspective, you want to make sure you take the time. Many times buyers are kind of a little hesitant to really dig in and get information from the seller, but it's very important to do that. Obviously, the financing. So if the if the buyer does not have the cash on hand to purchase the business at the desired price point, then either they have to be able to get financing from the bank, or they need to be able to get financing from you, the seller. Many times, the bank does not like to do a mixture of financing, meaning that sometimes it's difficult to get the bank to finance part of the deal. That's not true all the time, but it's something that you just want to be aware of if you're looking at financing options. The term sheet is sort of before it goes to the attorney. It's the non-legal, let's write out the terms of this agreement. And then the attorney is going to actually put together the formal sale agreement. And then we go into the transition from one owner to the other and one operation to the other. Again, this is where I would probably want to rely on the attorney to help you, kind of really nail down those details to make sure that there's, any tax issues are taken care of, liens, that's properly transferred from one owner to the other. Um, then the employees, right? We need to prepare the employees. We don't want the employees to, you know, wake up one morning, come to work, and realize that there's a new owner coming in the next day. So while you may not need to tell them a long time in advance, you do want to start preparing employees for the sale of the business, because that's where you're going to get them to be on board and be an asset in that transaction. And then the last decision is what kind of involvement, if any, should the owner have after the sale of the business. So the in my opinion, and this is how I typically advise a buyer, um, is that once they take over that business, they do not want the owner involved in any ownership role at all. Um, if there's value to having the owner around, we want to keep them on as a consultant because in that particular case, the new owner has the option to terminate that consulting agreement if it's not benefiting. Um, this is where things sometimes get sticky because and especially if an owner's been running their business for a long time, they may really be, um, feel very strong about how things are done. And the new owner is coming in and they want to change things up. So, coming in, the new owner wants to come in, have complete ownership. And if there's value in having the previous owner there, then we want to keep it usually as some kind of a contractual consulting arrangement. But the details of that need to get worked out as part of the deal. Okay, so then we have the conditional offer letter, which includes, again, this is where mostly the attorney is going to be involved, but some things that are involved in this would be, is the equipment serviceable? Does it work? Is the inventory saleable? We want to make sure there's no lawsuits or liens, that the seller actually has the right to sell the business, that, for example, there's no dissenting partner, or no partnership restrictions that are keeping the business from transferring. We want to address like what's in accounts payable and accounts receivable and who is responsible for them. So who's paying the bills that are due and who's collecting the money that is owed. We want to validate that what the seller is claiming is true. We want to be able to talk to the employees. The buyer wants to be able to talk to the employees. We talked about financing. um, and then, when you're getting ready to sell your business, we don't want to be having any major capital transactions happening at that point. So, you know, don't be making any big equipment purchases, or something that's requiring a debt or anything like that right before a purchase. And then the due diligence, as I mentioned, the buyer gets unrestricted access to review the business operations. Once the buyer is starting to be able to see the details, financial and operational details, in that case, then it is reasonable and typical for the owner to request a non-disclosure agreement, which basically, so the buyer signs a non-disclosure agreement, and what that does is it legally prevents the buyer from sharing any financial or intellectual property or any other confidential information that the current business owner is sharing with anyone else. So if the deal doesn't close, the buyer can't take that information and go to a competitor and share it. The NDA gives the current owner the ability to sue the prospective buyer in that situation. And again, as I mentioned, any time that the current owner restricts the prospective new owner from accessing information, is a red flag to the buyer that there's a problem going on here that someone's trying to cover up. Okay, so lastly, just leave it to the experts. You don't want to in the beginning, as I mentioned, so a business advisor can really help you to prepare for a lot of this. But once you get into the meat of the transaction, you want to have experts involved in this. So the experts are going to help you with how should you structure that deal. Should it be an asset sale, or how should it be structured? How do we legally get rid of any existing debts and obligations from the one owner to the next? Tax liabilities, any kind of a non-compete agreement. So if the current owner is leaving and we want to have a non-compete that stops them from going into business, one would hope that that wouldn't be needed, because if you're selling the business, I would assume you're not planning to go open a new one, but you never know. And then, just all the nitty gritty details of that business transaction. So an attorney, sometimes an accountant as well, to really help you kind of navigate through those details and not have any legal issues after the sale. So I don't think we've got questions, but this is my contact information, email and telephone number. And Drea will be able to share the recording and the presentation with you. But if you do need any help or you have questions about how to prepare for exiting, if you're a buyer or a seller, and you just need some guidance in purchasing or selling a business to help you prepare for that. Uh, this is a no cost service. We can help you with that. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us for assistance. So Drea, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Harriet, for sharing your expertise. And I highly recommend Harriet as a great resource if you have any questions moving on in the future about exit planning. So thank you for being here with us today, Harriet.
You're welcome.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and take care.